I just want to go on a little bit of a rant. I see these guys on YouTube, stockpiling like, 50 jugs of water in the basement, right? And, the funny thing is, a lot of these guys are not cycling through that water, right? So, say, for instance, they might have, stocked that water up in, like, say, 2020, like 4 or 5 years ago, right? And they're expecting to use that when, SHTF happens, right? Which initially they have the right mindset about, setting some water to the side, but they forgot about rotating through that water, right? Like, say, for instance, like, I recently had a box of water, because I had to move apartments recently, right? So I had to go through all the prepping stuff, right? And there was a box of water that I had there for like 3 years, right? And there's like, I don't know, maybe 8 gallons of water there. In the box, and I opened them just to see what's going on with them, and I tasted it. It had an off taste to it, like you could tell it was like I guess you could say a plasticky type of taste, and also smelled a little stale, for lack of better terms, right? So I ended up tossing all that water away, but it goes to show that you have to rotate through that water, right? So shit, I don't mind, losing the 8 gallons of water. But what about these guys that have 50 gallons in the basement and gonna rely on that, to cook their food with? So that's strike one. You got to rotate through this water, which is a whole nother point with water I'm gonna bring up a little bit later on that revolves around like these mountain house meals and freeze dry food, but I'll mention that later. But and a whole nother thing, with the water, which I wish I would have thought about this. I wish instead of throwing the water away, like down the drain, I wish I would have actually held on to it, not to drink, but rather to, say, for instance, like if there's ever an outage where, the taps are no longer, flowing, you can use that water to maybe take a makeshift shower if needed. Or even better, the better option would be maybe you could use that to like clean the floors, right? Or even better, use that to flush the toilet. Bear with me a second. It's nothing but shit to piss you off. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how these loan companies or whatever get my damn phone number. It's like, first of all, I'm not out here taking damn loans or owe anybody anything. I mean, shit, at this point, I don't even have a damn bank account. You know what I'm saying? I don't got nothing put in my name. So I don't know why the hell I keep getting these, bullshit calls. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I digress. Going back to the topic I was talking about. So yeah, instead of wasting those water, you could you could use them for makeshift things, right? Instead of just completely wasting it, right? It's, you can't go ahead and drink that because, the plastics that, will contaminate the water, of course, you obviously don't want that in you. So, you can't drink that old water now. And to clarify, it's not the water itself that went bad. It's rather the container it's in, like the plastics will leach into the water over time, right? So that's really what's going bad. It's not the water itself, it's actually the container it's in. So say, for instance, like maybe a viable option to like store water a little bit more long term, like say maybe extend the shelf life by say like maybe 2 years, 3 years, is if you get water in glass bottles, right? You can get water that's in glass bottles. Therefore, the plastic's not contaminating the the water, right? So that's an option. Of course, the downside with that though is the glass bottles are going to be much more heavier than the plastic. So hey, there's pros and there's cons, right? So anyway, another thing I wanted to talk about dealing with the water, right, is I see all these channels on YouTube talking about, oh, mountain house meals, or, they go to buy some of these like 25-year shelf life buckets that like can feed a family for a month or whatever. Yeah, that are like what, $80, maybe $100 for one damn bucket. And First of all, the food in there is a damn scam anyway. Sure, it might last 10, 15 years, but you're not going to want to eat that. You ain't going to want to eat that. And first of all, half the people buying the shit don't even know how to even prepare it, in the first place, right? Like, say, for instance, right, like half of these dummies buying this garbage would struggle to figure out how to cook a damn military MRE meal, right? Couldn't figure out that you have to add the water to the heater, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Oh man, but going back to what I was saying, right? So what are we talking about? These long-term food buckets, or whether we're talking about Mountain House MREs. The main downside with these, of course, there's a pros and cons. Pro is they have a very long shelf life. Like literally Mountain House meals out there that are good for like the next 25, 30 years, right? But the downside is for one, you need water in order to rehydrate and cook that food. And this is something I think a lot of preppers and, people in general overlook when it comes to, food preparedness, right? And, stocking up. Here it is. All these guys on YouTube, have in their closets, they got Mountain House packed to the ceiling. But then if you look at their water supply, they got like what, maybe a week or two worth of water for like two people. And they're just thinking about just regular drinking, right? Like every day, drinking water. And maybe, shower, taking a shower or something like that. That's what they have in their mind. But a lot of these people are not thinking about the fact that these meals that they have, stocked to the ceiling, right? These 25-year shelf life staples. Everybody keeps forgetting that these require water to cook them. So my question for these guys is, how are y'all going to get that? I damn well know you ain't going to be using tap water, because that ain't going to be around in a true SHTF scenario. You're not going to want to waste your precious, drinking water just to cook up food that you're going to have to, you're going to have to make multiple times a day. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people are just overlooking that, right? Like, sure, on one hand, these freeze-dried foods will last a very long time, but the downside is, well, there's multiple downsides. For one, it's, say, for instance, it's very expensive. Like Mountain House meals, shit, the last time I was at Walmart, I checked them out, right? Like literally a regular Mountain House meal is like what, 5, 6, I've even seen them up to $8 at times, right? For just one meal, right? So very expensive for it. And, of course, the main downside is all of them require water to make them. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of people are just overlooking that, right? Like everybody's just stocking up all these, long-term food buckets and, freeze-dried food, to the ceilings. But it's like nobody's thinking about, well, how the hell are you going to cook that? You ain't going to be eating that raw, right? Shit, you really couldn't even if you wanted to. A lot of that stuff. But a lot of people just overlooking this very basic thing, right? Like, hey, look, good for you, man, if you got, 2 years worth of Mountain House, stored up in the basement, or, 10 long-term buckets of food you bought from, Walmart or Costco or whatever. Like, good for you. But I mean, how are you going to prepare that, though, if it comes to it? A lot of these people, like, I agree with Canadian prepper, may I say Canadian pepper. I agree with him. He's saying that, a lot of these companies that are selling these products, they know that the people buying them are really never going to eat it. They're just buying it, maybe as a gift for somebody they know that's into prepping, or, they're just going to throw it in the closet for 20 years and just forget about it. And then if there's ever a downturn, they'll turn to it. But then when the people are angry that they got scammed, how the hell are you going to sue the people that sold you the shit when society collapses? And the answer is obviously you can't, right? So again, it's just a money-making scam, right? So now that we have this, stated that, you shouldn't stockpile Mountain House and, these other freeze-dried foods, which again, I've had some of these in the past, right? They can be good meals, but again, you got to factor in that all these things take precious water to heat them, right? And that's like the main downside. Of course, also the price. Because say, for instance, right, if I was to go get one Mountain House meal at Walmart, let's just say they're $6, right? So for the equivalence of the $6 pack, I could go and get, say, like 4 or 5 canned foods? Like, say, canned beans or something for the same price. So I think the better way to go, the better option to go when it comes to, like, saving food and, stuff like that would be canned goods. There are pros and there are cons. I'll say this. The con is they are heavy, right? They're extremely heavy and bulky, right? Those are the cons. The pros is they're very cheap. At least the vast majority of them are very cheap and affordable. And they can last literally for decades as long as you keep them in a cool environment, away from the heat and, freezing temperature. As long as you take care of them, then they're going to be there when you need them. So say, for instance, instead of, spending $1,000 on like 20 of these food buckets for 25-year shelf life, or these freeze-dried food garbage, instead what you should do is go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy some of those food grade buckets, those big thick buckets and lids. And then what you want to do is you can stack that full of cans, right? And this is what I do, right? This is the way I've done it. So you keep the cans protected in there, and no bugs or rodents are going to get into that, right? It's heavy duty, thick plastic. Nothing's going to get into that, right? And then just store them down in the basement, right? Or a food pantry, whatever you got at home, whatever. Or shit, you could even take them to a damn storage unit as long as it's climate controlled. And there you go. Right? So say, if you spend like $30, there you go. There's a bucket of food that's going to last, let's say, a week, maybe extend it to 2 weeks. And guess what? One of the other benefits of the canned foods, which I forgot to mention, not only are they cheap and affordable and can last for decades, but they're also, a vast majority of them, you can just eat straight out of the can, right? There's no reason to even heat them up or add water to them. You can just open the can and just eat it right there. Some of them are better, cooked. But if you needed to, you could really just eat them right there and then. But if you do stock cans, don't forget the can openers, though. All right, a lot of people, they make that mistake as well. You see these guys on YouTube. They got all, enough cans to, feed the Chinese army, right? But they got like 2 flimsy dollar store can openers for all of them. It's like, okay, so what's going to happen if you lose one and then one of them breaks? Well, that's why you should have multiple in stock. But can openers are one thing that I wouldn't cheap out on, right? Like, hey, look, even though I would say that the Dollar Tree is like a gold mine when it comes to prepping supplies, the one thing I would not buy there, at least in big bulk buys, would be the can openers. I'd recommend spending the couple extra dollars to get, like, say, a $5 one, or maybe even a nice steel $10 one, right? That might be a good investment to buy a couple of those heavy duty ones compared to some of these cheap flimsy ones that'll break after like 10 cans. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure, it might not be bad to have 1 or 2 of them flimsy ones, but you really want to have the the nice heavy duty ones. That's really what you want to have. And I really can't sit here and say to buy an electric one, because how the hell would you use that in the downturn of society when there is no electric? So that's something to consider as well. So I don't want to make this video too drawn out. I just wanted to go on a quick, rant about that, because I watched some of these, prepper videos lately, and everybody's, stocked up to the ceiling when it comes to all of these, freeze-dried goods. But yet, if you look at their water supply, for like a family of 5, they only have like what, like 4 or 5, crates of water. It's like, sure, that's not going to last very long. So I'm not going to make this video too drawn out. I just want to go on a quick rant, and I'm going to end it there.